Al-Quds population and to defend Al-Quds and preserving the Arabo-Islamic and Christian identity of the sanctuaries in the occupied Al-Quds, and also protecting the existing historical and legal status therein will continue the priority of the custodian, His Majesty King Abdullah II, who continued to reiterate that Al-Quds is a red line, and tampering with Al-Quds and its sanctuary is playing with fire. The kingdom will continue to exert every effort and to work with brethren and partners to end occupation and to achieve all the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people, notably the right to freedom and sovereign independent state with the occupied Al-Quds, Jerusalem, as its capital on the borders of the 4th of June 1967 in order to have just and comprehensive peace. This serious escalation should come to an end. Israel is responsible for this escalation. This is the immediate priority, and the way to achieve this is to immediately end the aggression and all Israeli practices that caused this escalation, and to reach a ceasefire that ends this deadly cycle of violence. And the efforts of the international community should concert its efforts to end this historical injustice visited on the Palestinian people. If left unchecked, there will be more serious escalations, and the whole region will remain a hostage of the conflict in every minute. Occupation is the source of all evil. Ending occupation is the only way to achieve peace. Israel will not enjoy security if it continues to deny Palestinians that security. And Israel and the whole region will not enjoy peace if the Palestinians continue to be denied peace. Israel undermines the prospects for peace by the construction and expansion of settlements, confiscation of land and demolition of homes, as well as displacement of population. Israel also continues to attempt to change the legal and historical status in the holy places and alter the demographic composition in Al-Quds and in the occupied West Bank. There is more than 700,000 Israeli settlers in East Jerusalem and the occupied West Bank, compared to 500,000 in 2010 and 370,000 in 2000. The construction of illegal settlements continues in an unprecedented pace, and this undermines the two-state solution, which the whole world agreed to as a way to achieve comprehensive and just peace. Killing the two-state solution leads to the inevitable one-state solution, and this begs the question, is it a state that guarantees equal rights for all its population, or in an apartheid regime? It is an illusion to think of achieving peace, stability, and security under an apartheid regime. Without finding genuine horizons for ending the occupation and ending this injustice, as well as achieving comprehensive and just peace that meets the aspirations of the nations of the region on the basis of the two-state solution and in accordance with the international law, this an escalation will follow another in a deadly cycle of violence. Either we end this cycle of violence that will threaten international peace and security and lead to a breach of the Charter of our organization every few years, or an immediate action to address the basis and the root causes of the conflict in terms of injustice, oppression, and occupation, to restore hope and to reach just and comprehensive peace, which the region and its nations deserve. This is a strategic choice and a regional and international necessity. Dear colleagues, the choice should be clear, and it is high time to act. I thank you, and peace be upon you.
I thank the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs and Expatriates of Jordan for his statement. I now give the floor to His Excellency Sabri Boukaddoum, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Algeria, speaking on behalf of the Arab Group.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Your Excellency, President of the General Assembly, Your Excellency, Secretary General of the United Nations, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Arab Group, allow me to express our deep thanks to you, Mr. Volkan Bozkir, President of the General Assembly, for quickly responding to the request by the Arab Group and the OIC to hold this emergency session. This meeting is being held at a time when our Palestinian brothers are going through tragic circumstances caused by the violent crimes perpetrated by the occupation powers against a people whose only fault is refusing to abide by to accept the policy of fait accompli. We all saw the graphic images of killing and destructions. We followed the attacks targeting the lives of Palestinians and their holy sites in occupied Jerusalem. We witnessed the barbaric raids which saw the seeds of terror and death in besieged Gaza. Is it possible to stay silent behind our screens after everything we saw? Counting victims, especially children, women, and old people, and witnessing the huge destruction to the infrastructure. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Palestine just gave us the numbers. It is possible, after everything we saw, to just listen to flowery speeches justify the disgraceful silence and inaction by the Security Council, and to those equating the aggressor? Undoubtedly, Mr. President, any attempt to falsify the reality and to turn the table will definitely fail. We have irrefutable evidence that houses were being destroyed while innocent civilians were inside them. We have irrefutable evidence of all forms of oppression and violations of human rights. Undoubtedly, the impunity given to the occupation will only exacerbate the situation, complicate it. It only serves the interests of very few people. Mr. President, this joint initiative by the Arab Group and the OIC, which was later supported by the non-aligned movement, is based on the fact that we want to urge our organization to shoulder its responsibilities based on the Charter. As the Security Council fails to take a stance regarding these tragic events, the Arab Group believes it is important for the General Assembly to act swiftly to adopt practical steps to reach a comprehensive cessation of violence against Palestinians and to use all available tools to protect them and protect their holy sites. Based on that, the Arab Group believes that the gravity of the situation requires collective efforts to ensure an immediate cessation of hostilities and to immediately address the catastrophic humanitarian situation in all occupied Palestinian territories. We need to provide the necessary circumstances to resume the peace process, to address the root causes of the conflict by ending the occupation of all Palestinian territories in line with relevant terms of reference. The Arab group expects everyone to clearly and expressly condemn the systematic killing of Palestinians without any duplication. We expect everyone to hold accountable the perpetrators of crimes against innocent civilians. We call upon the Secretary General of the United Nations to declare a state of emergency, a state of humanitarian emergency, to allow the international community to effectively alleviate the suffering of Palestinian civilians and to take steps to reconstruct Gaza, which is suffering under occupation for the past 15 years. Mr. President, these painful events remind us once again of the reality of the suffering of the Palestinian people, which continue to be occupied and besieged. We salute their attachment to their legitimate rights. We reaffirm that the United Nations has not done enough, especially the Security Council. It has not done enough to find a just, comprehensive solution to the Palestinian cause, which is only fuming the flames of instability at the regional and international level. We have to start calling things by their names. The occupation of Palestinian territories and other Arab territories will always remain an occupation. This occupation will continue to lead to the worst violations. The Palestinian question can only be solved by addressing the root causes of the conflict, namely by ending the occupation of Palestinian territories and allowing Palestinian people to practice their inalienable right to self-determination and establish their independent state with Al-Quds al-Sharif as a capital. In this regard, we reaffirm that Al-Quds al-Sharif, Holy Jerusalem, it remains occupied. It will always remain forever the capital of Palestine. It will remain an integral part of occupied Palestine. We stress the need to preserve the historic and legal status of Jerusalem and its holy sites, including Al-Aqsa Mosque. Mr. President, 76 years ago, the United Nations was established. Ever since, the Palestinian question has always been one of the items on its agenda. Hundreds of resolutions were adopted, and all these resolutions have stressed the right of the Palestinian people, their inalienable right to self-determination, independence, sovereignty, and the right of Palestinians to return to their homes and property. However, the historic justice inflicted upon the Palestinians remains until today. Promises were not implemented, and Palestinians continue to be displaced. Their land and property continue to be taken away. Where are we today? Have we implemented Resolution 181, which provided for the division of Jerusalem with a detailed map? Where are we today after the Madrid Peace Conference and the Oslo Accords? Where are we today after we adopted hundreds of resolutions by the General Assembly and dozens of resolutions in the Security Council, starting with Resolution 242 of 1967, until the latest resolution 2334 in 2016. Where are we today? Have we implemented all that? During that period, the occupying power continued to occupy more than 85% of Palestinian territories at a time when Jerusalem is victim to campaigns of displacement and destruction, targeting the obliteration of its identity. So we firmly believe that there can be no solution to the Palestinian question without us all taking a courageous position to end two things, namely impunity and the occupation of Palestinian territories. Thank you for listening.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Algeria for his statement. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Turkey.
Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, esteemed delegates. Let me begin by thanking the President of the General Assembly, Mr. Volkan Bozkır, for his leadership in convening today's meeting. I wish Allah's mercy for the Palestinian victims, including women and children, who have lost their lives due to Israeli aggression. I also express our heartfelt condolences to the Palestinian people. I also wish speedy recovery to our wounded brothers and sisters whose number has reached thousands. Ladies and gentlemen, a tragedy has been taking place in Palestine for many years. A heartbreaking tragedy is continuing before our eyes. Through repetition, the perpetrators of this tragedy want us to become insensitive to these outrageous crimes, the oppression of the Palestinian people, and violations of their basic human rights and freedoms. However, we will not remain silent in the face of unspeakable atrocities and brutality, because we know that silence in the face of injustice equals to being accomplice to the crimes committed. He who remains silent in the face of injustice is a mute devil. In order to effectively address the current situation, we should first and foremost diagnose its root causes correctly. The continuing Israeli provocations in Jerusalem, desecration of Al-Aqsa Mosque, violation of freedom of worship, and forced evictions of the Palestinian people from their homes in Sheikh Jarrah triggered the current crisis. All these acts of aggression took place in the holy month of Ramadan, a time of prayer and peaceful reflections for Muslims. In Gaza, not only high-rise civilian buildings, but also schools and hospitals were targeted. They even did not hesitate bombing buildings used by UNRWA, Red Crescent, and media outlets. Gaza's most renowned medical doctors were killed due to Israeli airstrikes. Let me be clear. Such acts of aggression amount to war crimes. We have to assign the blame where it belongs. Israel alone is responsible for what is happening today in Jerusalem, West Bank, and Gaza. Repetition of such tragedies cannot be prevented unless and until Israel is held accountable for its crimes and its sense of impunity is to put to an end. Mr. President, sustainable peace and stability in the Palestinian territories can only be achieved if and when the illegal and inhumane Israeli occupation finally ends. In fact, recent Israeli aggressions are part of its policies to subject the Palestinians to ethnic cleansing and advance its annexation plan. Likewise, Israel's continuing blockade of Gaza has effectively turned this land to the largest open-air prison in the world. We're talking about a land of 365 square kilometers with more than 2 million people. Have a look. These maps set forth the truth. This is the synopsis of the continuing occupation and suffering since 1947. In so doing, Israel aims to further erode the established parameters for the two-state solution and create a new fait accompli. Therefore, what needs to be done now is not only help establish a ceasefire, but also mobilize international efforts to end Israel's occupation and blockade over Palestinian territories. Mr. President, it is unfortunate and disturbing that the UN Security Council